Hello, I'm Pam Ostrowski, your one-in-service leader, champion, and your host today. I'm also the CEO of Service Organization Strategies, who works with vendors and channel partners on services development, marketing, and sales training. Over the last 30 plus years, I'm not counting, I've worked with companies like HP, Cisco, Polycom, 3Com, Avnet, Extreme Networks, and their channel partner communities. So a couple of notes for everyone. We want to make sure that everyone understands that this is being recorded, so therefore do not share confidential information at this time. We do have meetings where you can do that, but not when we record them. Also, this is a very collaborative type of environment, and so people have a tendency to get passionate, which is wonderful, except that then if you get too passionate and you talk for too long, then no one else gets an opportunity to speak. So try to keep your responses to about a minute. Just a reminder too that this is a 30-minute session, so we did 15 minutes of networking and great conversation before, and we'll also do the same afterwards. So we want to make sure that we have time to do that. So if you have questions for an individual, feel free to stay on the line afterwards. If you have specific questions either for me or out to the group, you should see a chat bubble on your GoToMeeting session, and feel free to pop in your question there, or if you have any feedback or input. If you have a PowerPoint slide or a website or something you'd like to share with the group, I can hand over control to you so that you can make this even more collaborative. So today, we're going to talk about the 5 ways that we can get your sales teams to become trusted advisors to your customers so that you can decide how best to prepare those salespeople for 2016. My guest today is Jim Barnett, and he is the Director of Sales and Marketing at Promise Enterprise PSA Software. And just for those folks who aren't familiar with that acronym, that's Professional Services Automation. Jim has a deep professional services business process knowledge and experience, and especially around regarding best practices in sales relationships. We had a great conversation before we got started. So Jim, he's been in the software and technology industry for 20 years. Just wanted to say welcome, Jim. How are you today?
I'm doing very well, Pam, although I am commiserating with Mets fans for the demise of my Blue Jays.
Oh, I'm so sorry. But, you know, what are you going to do? It's, you know, maybe next season. How about that? Does that make you feel better?
Makes me feel a little bit better.
Okay, good. Well, everyone, it's time to sharpen the saw. So the focus here in these collabinars is to progressively talk about things that are really key to your business success. So let's calibrate this conversation. 2016 is right around the corner. In our last Collabinar, we talked about the fact that our sales reps have to retool their skill sets in order to even get to the table. So reinforcement of those skills and the reinforcement training is critical to them assimilating and retaining those skills. So one of those skills happened to be earning the trust of the customer, which is why we're doing a deep dive today. So Jim, everybody has a different definition of trust, right? So when it comes to customer relationships, what's your definition? Do customers who trust a sales rep behave differently, or do they? Is it difficult to pick up on those clues?
I don't think so, and I think you have to understand that question kind of in the context of how the sales rep's role is changing and how the customer's perception of sales reps is changing as well. If you go back 10 years, customers viewed the sales rep as the primary source of product and pricing information.
Right.
And the internet has really changed that paradigm significantly, so that now a good portion of the customer self-education about product options, solution options, different approaches, and even pricing information is available on the web, and customers consume that information as part of their early stages self-education process, and by the time they get to a rep, the value of conveying that information isn't very high anymore. Mm-hmm. And so when you ask about earning trust, what it's really come down to is where can the sales rep add value for their customers? And where that trust comes from, or how you want to evaluate, you know, do the customers view your reps with trust? It's really that the customer is now looking at the rep not as a source of product and pricing information. What they're really looking for is consultative assistance in making the right solution decision. And so the rep, instead of being on the other side of the desk, as in the olden days when they were the resources for product and pricing information, now they're on the same side of the desk with the customer, trying to help the customer come to a vision and a solution set that is the best fit for their requirements. And so if you want to talk about, what are the indicators of that, then the first indicator would be when the customer approaches a rep, are they asking the rep for quotes, or are they asking the rep for advice? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's pretty simple, because if you're the guy they go to for quotes, well, there's lots of people they can go to for quotes, mm-hmm. right? But if you've earned their trust, if they really feel like you have value to bring to the table, then what they really want is your advice, right? I'm thinking about this solution set, or I have this problem. What do you think is the best way of addressing this? Mm-hmm. I think if you fall into the category of the rep that the customer is looking to pricing and product information from, then it's the difference between, are you RFP fodder, or are you helping the customer create the RFP specifications, right? Right. And then if the customer is also asking you context questions, right, not just about that particular point solution, but in the context of their broader strategy, of their existing deployments, of the things that they've already put in place, then that's another good indicator that they're looking to you as an advisor, not just a source of product and pricing information.
Those are all great points. Does anybody else have something to augment as far as definitions of trust on the line? Trust behaviors. Okay, well, looks like you nailed it on the head, Jim. So let's move forward. It's interesting when we talk about sales reps and how they can actually earn that trust, right? Because some of the things that you mentioned totally makes sense as far as customer behaviors, but what's the first way that we can get a sales rep to start earning a customer's trust, whether it's an existing customer or, maybe even more difficult, a prospect?
Well, I think if you talk about existing customers, then again, it really comes down to if you want to be an advisor, you have to be able to give answers or feedback to the customer in context, right? So you have to know everything about what's going on in that customer account as far as your company is touching them from an operations perspective. So if you think about, a really good way to make sure that a rep stays the resource that the customer goes to for quotes, then just give them access to CRM information, right? Don't let them see anything about project delivery. Don't let them see anything about help desk support. Don't let them see anything about existing asset deployments. Just keep them in CRM. And then you pretty much put them in a position where the only information they have to share with the customer is around, product and pricing information. Mm-hmm. And so if you want the rep to earn the customer's trust, one of the first things the organization can do to help support that rep is to really give them access to all of the operational transactional information about what your company is providing to that customer, so that they can have these conversations with the customer about new solutions in the context of existing services or products that you are providing them with. And again, if you really want to add value to those conversations with the customer, it can't just be about that point solution. It has to be, well, how does that point solution fit into the customer's broader goals and existing infrastructure? And in order to do that, the rep really has to have comprehensive visibility on everything that the company's done and is currently doing with that customer.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, one of the things that seems to be a challenge for a lot of sales reps is the tactical versus the strategic conversation. I hear a lot of reps, one, may be afraid of talking about maybe some of the more detailed things that are happening in the account. So when you talk about everything, do you have any perspective on how do you weigh how much tactical versus how much strategic? How much focus do you put on that customer's objectives and where they're headed in the future versus saying, here's where your account is now? Because I know in quarterly business reviews, that seems to be the biggest challenge and balance issue for sales reps.
Well, so again, I think it becomes what kind of value are you adding to those customer interactions? So if what you're constraining yourself to is that the customer wants a telephone system, or the customer wants a new server in the data center, and that's the primary communication you're going to have is constrained to that conversation, then there's lots of people they can have that conversation with, and there's lots of people they can get product information from, and lots of people they can get pricing information from. And so even when you're talking about a tactical conversation, if you really want to add value, it should be in the context of a broader conversation about how that new point solution fits into an existing infrastructure or an existing solution set, and in the context of the customer's overarching solution strategy. And so it's not a matter of one or the other. It's that even if you're having a tactical point solution conversation, if you really want to add value to that conversation, it needs to be in the context of how that fits into the rest of the things that the customer is trying to accomplish, or into their longer term strategic goals.
Excellent point. So we've got 1 down and 4 more to go. So what would you say is the second way that sales reps can earn a customer's trust? Jim?
Well, if you talk about the, again, tactical or strategic approach, then if you really, again, want to be strategic, then you have to start to talk about reactive versus proactive strategies. And so if you are really providing context to the feedback, and you really are advising the customer, what you should start to help is build a collaborative strategy and a vision with that customer, so that now if you really want to add value, if you really want to earn trust, you're actually proactively bringing solutions or ideas or concepts to the table that will help the customer advance their goals, right? Again, if you think about the alternative, which is to be reactive, wait until the customer comes to a conclusion about something they need, wait until the customer kind of defines the scope of that solution, and then wait until they ask you for product and pricing information. That's the reactive point solution approach. That doesn't add much value, and there's lots of people they can have that conversation with. If you're not just providing additional feedback around context when the customer approaches you that way, but if you're actually the one who's coming to the customer and saying, well, I understand that you have this vision or idea, but have you thought about this? Or in the context of what you've done so far, or some of the other challenges you have, then you might even want to consider this alternative option. Or even before the customer gets to the point where they think they have a problem that justifies allocating resources to address, if you could even come to them and say, hey, I see this trending in this direction. A good example would be a lot of reactive repair and maintenance activities happening, as opposed to maybe managed services would be a better way to go, because it's more proactive as a strategy. It helps the customer by making sure that they don't have business continuity issues, and ultimately it fits better into the customer's concept of financial planning and right. So that's really the difference between having a reactive strategy and a proactive strategy. And if you're really adding value, then that's the direction that you can start to take those conversations with the customer. And that's when you really start to add value as a sales rep.
Right, totally. And it's so funny, I've seen sales reps go, well, thank you for that input. And now let's get back to my slide deck. And it's a sense of, are you listening and are you engaging with that customer? So to me, another little, maybe number 2A would be stay away from your slide deck and go where the customer takes you in the conversation. Does anybody else have any feedback on, what they've seen based on the concept of proactive versus reactive engagement with the customer in order to build trust?
Hey, Pam, it's George. How are you?
Good, thanks. Good to hear from you.
Good. Hey, yeah, just a couple things really just to enforce what Jim was talking about, and I think it's worked well when I've seen, truly high caliber sales professionals who've moved themselves into a position to really be somebody that the customer goes to for advice and really reaches out to that person to bring them into the conversation. And that's really, focusing upon, helping that business or that business owner or that IT professional understand what the mega trends are in their given area and how to position it, and help them actually create a strategy. And to Jim's point, how do you get to them before they do all the research and go down a certain set of tracks to potentially do business and bring in technology over time. And really what I found is very effective is really getting into the discussion of how is technology being used in their market segment, what's the impact, how are other people doing it, and to Jim's point, really building up the information that you're providing over to that customer in a way that they can consume it, number one, and then secondarily understand that you can be of assistance to them no matter what their point initiatives are, that you're really helping them strategically form their view of how technology could drive their business.
Oh, that's an excellent point. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, well, we have 3 more to go, so we'll just keep moving. Now, Jim, so far we have know everything about your customer, and then be proactive with solutions, not reactive. What would you say is the third way to earn trust?
Well, it really has to do with the ability to quarterback the account, and then not just being proactive with solutions, but how quickly can you respond to the customer's queries about different aspects of their business. So if they, again, view the sales rep as the person that they go to for quotes, then that's kind of the reputation that the rep has earned in terms of where they can add value. But if you're really the quarterback of the account, they should be able to ask you questions about anything going on in their account, the status of a project, the status of a high priority support issue, issues about service contract renewal. That's, again, where you become the resource if you're really earning the title of trusted advisor. You're the one that they really look at as the person who's managing their account. And so it's not just about having access to the information, it's also about having access and being able to respond in a very timely manner. So even if you do have the customer has questions around product pricing, how quickly can you access that information? But then if the customer has has questions outside of that domain about their account, how quickly can the rep access that information and respond to that customer with the right answer, like with the real-time information? We've all seen reps who have gone diligently around the organization and gathered information from the project managers, from the help desk people, from the order fulfillment people, and they've written that down in their notebook. And then they leave the office to go to a customer meeting, and that's 2 hours later or 3 hours later, and the customer starts to ask them questions, and they refer to their notebook, and they reflect back to the customer the answer to their questions, and then the customer says, well, that's not what the project manager told me an hour ago.
Right.
Or that's not what someone who just phoned the help desk 20 minutes ago said. And so it's not just about the rep's intention to try and gather that information. It's about how does the organization support the rep so that they actually have access to the information they need to have those conversations with the customer, and then the rep staying on top of all those issues so they really can be viewed as the quarterback of the customer account, not just a siloed resource for certain aspects of information.
Excellent. And I totally agree. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the story of having been in the support organizations at many of the companies I mentioned earlier. A sales rep calls and says, Pam, I can't believe it. I'm at the account and I didn't know about X, Y, or Z. And, so we're going to talk a bit about tools. We're not going to, let the cat out of the bag, but quite yet. But it is really important to have that information because credibility gets directly impacted by not having those answers, by looking like you're out of the loop. And that there's not synergy at your company, right? I mean, that your company isn't keeping this account manager in the loop. What other things are they not communicating? So there immediately puts that sense of doubt in there. So what would you say is the fourth way to earn trust? What are your thoughts on okay, we've talked about proactivity, and now they need to have information at their fingertips. What would you say is the fourth issue or concern with that?
Well, the challenge that the reps face, and to a lesser extent the project manager or field resources, even if the rep did, while they're in the office, have access to this information so they could quarterback the customer account effectively, is the minute they leave the office, now they're compromised because the access to that information is typically significantly more restricted. So, and it's kind of a layered issue. You know, when I'm in the office, in order to gain access to that information, I have to wander around the organization talking to the different resources to keep myself on top of, you know, deliverables outside the sales department. But then the minute I leave the office, now you've even layered on another barrier because I've, you know, got my smartphone or my tablet with me, but I only have access to like the customer's company location and contact information. And now if I want access to that information, I have to phone somebody or email somebody. And the minute I do that, it's very interesting if you watch the interaction between the customer and the rep. The minute I do that, what I'm basically communicating to the customer is I'm not the knowledge resource.
Right.
I don't know what's going on with your project. Let me phone someone who knows what's going on with your project. I don't know what's going on with that support ticket. Let me phone somebody or email somebody who knows what's going on with that ticket. So then the customer figures that out, and so they just cut out the middleman. Right? They want to know what's going on with their project. They just go to the project manager. They want to know what's going on with their ticket. They just phone the help desk manager. And so the ability of the rep, once they leave the office, to have equal access to that information to quarterback the account effectively is paramount, because, you know, even in today's infrastructure environment of WebExes and GoToMeetings and teleconferences, there is still a lot of face-to-face interaction and relationship building that reps do. And so you need to make sure that they have equal access to that information when they're out of the office as they do when they're in the office.
Well, you know, and you brought up an interesting point that I think gets perhaps shoved under the rug a little bit, which is having a rep who's paid a certain amount, commission-based, running around asking each individual functional manager or a functional individual, you know, what's the status on this account, or sending out an email blast and waiting for people to come back to them, or even doing the other interaction where the customer is calling in to whoever they believe is the subject matter expert on whatever question they have. Both of those are very expensive business models to an IT solutions provider. And ultimately, having worked on the vendor side a lot, it was a problem. As a matter of fact, that's where a lot of some really cool self-help tools have come from for tech support. Is we don't want necessarily, we're the back end, we're the back office staff. We don't want you calling us necessarily. You know, go look for your information, talk to your account rep. So, and there's a reason for that. The financial business model isn't designed for a customer to do that. So there's additional cost associated with that, in addition to the sales rep losing some credibility there. So let's hand it back out to the group. You know, any thoughts on the challenges around preparation and having information at your fingertips?
This is Ron.
Hey, Ron.
Hey, you know, being a cabling contractor, we're way down the bottom of the food chain from what you guys are talking about right now. But it is interesting because our success really has been based on taking leadership positions within our account base. And what has happened is, because most of our business nowadays comes via general contractors, we have the challenge of getting in with the end user client to make sure everybody's needs are met, and taking that broader look at the job, where actually I'm walking into a job meeting right after our call here, where I'm going to be talking about 3 other service providers that are on this particular project to update the client as to what needs to be done or changed in order to implement their overall goals. And everything that's being said here is really pertinent to that. And it's all about the guys in the field that actually know what's going on, and that information being relayed to, even though I own the company, I'm kind of like the sales rep right now. So very, very interesting what we're talking about.
Great. Well, I'm glad you're finding it valuable. Any other input or feedback before we move on to number 5?
Yeah, I think you raised an interesting point there. And so, you know, you talked about the inefficiency and the ineffectiveness of having a bunch of different resources siloed with the subject matter expertise, and then having someone having to manually go around and get that. Not only does it waste the sales rep's time, it wastes those individuals' time and takes their time away from actually doing productive work. And then in the example that was just given, if you start to layer on top of that, also working with subcontract resources or third-party resources, now you've just got a 3D layer cake. And so this idea of providing infrastructure so that that information can be collected and shared in a centralized fashion so that people can self-service to stay on top of things, I think that's another layer that just is headed in the same direction as the other topics or portions of the conversation that we're having.
Excellent. Yeah, good point. Was there someone else who had a comment?
Yeah, just one other thing, Pam, that from my perspective, as well as, the sales professional wanting to earn their way to be that trusted advisor, it's really incumbent upon the organization to support that in the ways of, approach, the way the company acts, and the tools that are there to support that professional in truly pulling their game together and allowing them to be not only the trusted advisor, but somebody who's super responsive and earns their way into that position.
Oh, that's a good point, too. Because ultimately, we don't, as customers, I don't think customers expect a rep to know everything necessarily, but that they know the right people and they can get the information very quickly. So that does bring us to the fifth way. This poor guy in the picture here looks like he's in a lot of pain because he found out some information too late. So this begs the question. We've talked about how important information, being up to date, having information at your fingertips. What's the fifth way, Jim, that we can earn a customer's trust? How can we help these poor sales reps out there who have information lag?
Well, so I don't know if it would be kind of a fifth way to earn trust as much as it's how do you empower your reps, how do you infrastructure reps so that they can take responsibility and ownership of developing that trusted advisor relationship that ideally the organization wants them to have. And I think George made an excellent point. I think there's two parts to it. There's technology and there's infrastructure, but there's also the organization's attitude towards the rep. And you have to make sure that there's a support of the organization's kind of philosophy in giving the rep access to information. We did a blog not that long ago where we talked about, the accounting department would rather stick needles in their eyes than give the reps access to financial information, right, fulfillment information. And the project managers, their belief is that, it's easier just to tell the rep what's going on in the project, because if they gave them access to a project plan, the rep wouldn't really understand it anyway. And the help desk department is too busy addressing customer issues to take the time to update the rep. And so, George is bang on. You have to have kind of executive management support that says, no, we want to empower our reps, and we will, make sure that the people in our organization are supporting the reps so that they can stay on top of and quarterback their accounts properly. And then the next layer is, okay, now that we have that mandate, what does that look like from an infrastructure perspective? How do we deploy that in a way so that the rep doesn't just have access to CRM information? How do we give them easy access to order fulfillment, project management, help desk, and other customer information so that they can really stay on top of those conversations with their customers? So I would say there's two parts to it. There's the management mandate, and then there's the technological infrastructure to support that.
So what types of tools would a sales rep have? How do you, this is a lot of information. What type of tools actually consolidate that type of information so that a rep, before he opens the door handle on his car, can go, ooh, I just found out they just made the network's down. I'm going to be walking into a network down situation.
Well, so there are a variety of, business operations softwares out there. I think, again, there's the two components to it. There's access to, and the organization, of course, certainly wants controls, role-based security around, what certain individuals can and can't see. So there's the business software itself, and then there's the second layer, which is mobile access to those business software tools. So, you have ERP software for services organizations. You have professional services automation software, which is the category that we fall into. And then there's the second layer for those, business operation software tools. What mobile access, how comprehensive is the mobile access to that information for those different tools?
Got it. Okay. So just to review, we have 5 ways or 5 methods for earning customers' trust. So 1, know everything about your accounts. 2, use that information to offer proactive solutions. 3, stay on top of customer deliverables and problems. 4, have up-to-the-minute information through mobile access. And then invest in the right tools. Does anybody have anything else to add to this list so that we can make it maybe the 7 ways to earn customers' trust?
I'd add George's point, Pam.
Okay.
I'd say, have an executive mandate that we want to empower the reps and give them access to this information. That would be one of the points I'd add for sure.
Okay, good point. All right. So that's actually all we have time for today. That went really quickly, so I just wanted to say thank you, Jim, for your time and perspective. And thank you, everyone.
Welcome. Happy to participate. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, you're very welcome, and I very much appreciate you taking the time to prepare for this session. But also, thank you to our participants. I know there's other people on the line who didn't get a chance to speak up. That's one of the challenges of a 30-minute session. But we'll have this recording available, and I would encourage you to actually share this with other folks and encourage them to attend. Feel free to take the meeting invitations that I send out to you and send them along. Also, as a note, be sure to save the date Wednesday, December 9th, because it's off schedule from our normal first Wednesday of the month. And we're going to be talking about what's your findability factor. So can customers find you when they're looking for a solution? We're going to talk a bit about who is actually going onto your website, why they're going onto your website, and what they're finding when they get there, in addition to how else you interact from a findability factor. In addition, we've also got podcast, Service Talk podcasts coming out, and so watch your inbox for those regarding the skills your engineers need and increasing billable utilization. So I want to make sure everybody knows about that. And then last but not least, if you have questions about how to join One in Service, please go to our membership page. So just go to the number 1, the letter N, and the word service.com. and click on members or click on basically any of the top menu items and you'll be able to find this page. So I want to say thank you again to Jim and to all of my participants, and I look forward to hearing your input and feedback as we move forward with additional Collabinars. Thanks so much.